Happy Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. There's not too many changes with your forecast itself, maybe a slight uptick in the rain chances, which definitely isn't a bad thing because we were talking about yesterday how much we could probably use some rain given that we have been in a very dry and warm stretch as of recently. But the rain chances still aren't very impressive, still looking like hit or miss showers that are going to be in the cards. We'll go over what I'm talking about with the latest run of Future View. So your headlines, the pattern does remain in place with cool mornings and some warm days. Very small rain chances, but a lot better than what we've seen at least over the past week, maybe week and a half, where we've seen maybe a blip or two pop up on Future View. And we've really just been maintaining the 10% chance of rain to cover the bases. I think the 10% chance of rain that you will see on your 7-day forecast is going to be more accurate of the actual coverage of some light showers. First things first, taking a walk around the quad where we had some clouds and maybe even a couple of sprinkles in maybe Putnam and Hancock counties early this morning. Well, that is not the case anymore. Plenty of blue sky as you take a look around from downtown Macon to downtown Dublin, Warner Robins, and the Georgia National Fairgrounds. Hard to believe the Georgia National Fair will be coming up in about 16 days. So this is going to be a very fun sky cam to show you as we transition into the beginning of October. Temperature-wise here in Central Georgia this morning, we've warmed up from a mix of those 50s and those 60s earlier this morning. We see plenty of scattered 70s, anywhere from the low 70s, 72, 73 at the coolest areas like Eastman, McRae, Dublin, Warner Robins, Macon, and down over into Unadilla, Montezuma, and Americus. At the warmest, we're hovering somewhere in the mid-70s, around 75, like Gordon, Milledgeville, up into Eatonton, 76 at the warmest in Sparta and Monticello, and another 75 down here in Vidalia. So 76, the warmest temperature that we see, obviously not the warmest temperature in the eastern United States. New Orleans still sitting somewhere in the low 80s, 81 over in Houston, 82 down in Orlando. So once again, New Orleans is going to take the cake for the warmest temperature here at this hour. I believe this has been a streak that's been going on for about maybe a week and a half or so in time. But obviously, those temperatures are going to continue to be cooler and cooler as we transition week by week into the month of October and the start of the fall season. Just taking a look at some of the wind patterns that we have going on around here, you can see actually a low pressure center establishing itself just off the coast of the Carolinas and Virginia. That's indicated by this counterclockwise rotation right here, just southeast of Virginia Beach, and that's been propelling some scattered rain chances across those portions of the country. Dew point temperatures in the lower 60s, maybe a few areas holding on to those upper 50s like Eastman and Swainsboro. Overall, it's not really a noticeable humidity whatsoever, but there is some moisture in the atmosphere, and that's the main point of emphasis that we are going to be talking about. So there is plenty of drier air farther up to the north and the northeast. We still have that flow coming down from the northeast, but it is more easterly once you get into central Georgia, indicating that our pattern of that northeasterly breeze ushering in some of those lower surface dew points is starting to break apart. Back over to the west, you see patchy areas of dark green over into Mississippi and Louisiana, typical of what we have seen as of recently. Now let's go to your feels like temperatures. Looks like the sensor issue up in LaGrange got resolved a little bit ago because we were seeing a patchy area of purple and pink colors up here on the Georgia-Alabama state line. That's obviously not the case. That would indicate feels like temperatures well down into the single digits more than likely. We know we typically don't ever see that in the state of Georgia, let alone in the month of September. So your feels like numbers, pretty accurate of what your actual temperatures read. There's one lone 80 popping up down in Unadilla, just maybe some slightly higher moisture content that is influencing the feels like numbers. The winds and the wind gusts, you will see an occasional breeze up to 5, maybe 8 miles per hour, but there's not too many shades of that blue color, so that's going to indicate your widespread kind of steady breeze in the forecast, and we're really not looking at much of a breeze to be present throughout your Tuesday afternoon. Hour by hour, we'll continue the warm up. By midday, we should reach that 80-degree mark, 81 as opposed to what this graphic showed yesterday, which was sitting at 80 degrees, continuing to increase and sitting somewhere around 85 throughout almost all of the afternoon. I do believe maybe we'll climb a little bit higher than what this graphic does say for your high temperature. But let's go ahead and talk about the numbers yesterday and see how today kind of pairs up with what we saw on Monday afternoon. 86 degrees for a high yesterday. That was 2 degrees shy of average. 86 was about 1 degree above what I had forecasted, but 85, 86 pretty much feeling the same no matter what number that you did hit yesterday. 56 degrees for a morning low. So we saw a 30-degree temperature increase from that morning low temperature yesterday morning all the way into that afternoon high. 56, kind of right in smack dab in the middle of our average low temperature, which is 65 degrees. We were 9 degrees below that yesterday, and 47 degrees, the record low back in 1967. 101 was the record all-time yesterday back in 1980. I haven't seen a triple-digit number pop up there in quite some time, so 1980 was definitely a very, very warm time. Didn't record anything in the way of rain yesterday, not very shocking. We weren't forecasting much in the way of rain, so your departure of rain creeps closer and closer down to that 5-inch mark. Still a very substantial cushion as we go into a relatively dry stretch that continues to linger on across this week and maybe even into the beginning of next week. Sunrise yesterday was at 7:18. The sunset was at 7:40. And speaking of those sunset times, we always talk about how the days continue to get shorter. So obviously we're heading into that time of the year where the daylight is going to be shorter in terms of the duration of it, and it will continue to get shorter all the way until we get into the first day of winter, which will be December 21st. So by September 22nd, which is coming up very fast, in fact, I believe that's going to be next Tuesday. Actually, no, that's going to be the first day of fall, so that will be next Monday. Sunrise will be at 7:22 in the morning. Sunset already at 7:30, and we're going to have just over 12 hours of daylight. Still not really noticing much of that change as of right now. I think the big change is actually going to come once we get to November 2nd. But as we go into the middle of October, 7:38, that sunrise time, and then 7:01. So we are looking at that sunset to be almost before 7 p.m. by the time we roll into the later portion of October. I think that's where you're really going to finally notice the change in the hours of daylight. Just under 11 and a half hours of daylight as we go into the middle of October. But then November 2nd, that's when we fall back. So that's when the clock switch, daylight saving time officially ends. So your sunrise is actually going to go back before the 7 a.m. hour. So the sunrise is going to be a little bit earlier, 6:53 a.m. for your sunrise time. However, your sunset is going to get substantially earlier. So right now, this would, if we didn't have daylight saving time, this would be 6:42 for November 2nd on the sunset time. But there you see 5:42. So before 6 p.m., that's the really first indication that we're really heading into the winter time period. Just under 11 hours of daylight that we will have as daylight saving time does end officially on November 2nd. So your forecast for today, 86 degrees for a high temperature. That would match what we did yesterday. So not much change in those afternoon high temperatures. Still throwing a mostly sunny icon up on the today graphic, and obviously some light showers being possible. That's the big change that we've seen from today and yesterday, but overall it's not much of a change. I really think most of you are probably going to dodge the rain altogether as we go into the evening and nighttime hours. That's the timing that the rain was trending earlier this morning according to the graph model. We'll have to see what it says with this latest updated model run. Heat indices today, still not going to waver much, maybe feeling a degree or two warmer than what the actual temperature is, right there around 3, 4, and 5 o'clock. So maybe a slight uptick in humidity could make some of the numbers feel just a little bit warmer. Although if you're feeling like 87 and your temperature, say 85 degrees, not too much of a difference. It's still going to be a warm afternoon, and you're still really going to feel that predominantly dry air throughout most of this afternoon. And then as you head into the evening hours, 84, the feels like number right there around dinner time at 7 p.m., going down to 80, and then 74 degrees as you're rounding out the evening time frame going into the nighttime hours. And then yes, we'll be in the 70s if you do have any late night plans for your Tuesday. So obviously going to get more and more pleasant as you go into the evening and nighttime hours right there around sunset. Here's your satellite and radar picture currently. We don't see much in the way of cloud cover. You can see where some of that cloud cover was lingering earlier this morning. And right now it looks like most of that is continuing to fall apart in nature. But there have been scattered showers up to the north of us in central Georgia, a little bit closer to the I-20 corridor, and you can see some flashes of green right there above the banner right above where it does say radar. So maybe if that's where your commute's going to take you later on this afternoon, maybe heading out of town for a work conference or such, maybe having to head up to Greenville, South Carolina, or going up to Athens, Georgia, you could run into some stray cloud cover, maybe a brief sprinkle, but it's going to be very brief in nature. And when I say brief, I mean only a couple of minutes, just a passing shower to provide you with a little bit of water on your windshield to wash off any of those pesky bugs that are still remaining in the forecast in light of the little bit of humidity that we still do have left. Here's a look at the state of Georgia as a whole. There's what those showers look like. Yes, like I said, very minuscule right around the Athens area right now, south of I-85, really in between I-85 and I-20 in the state of Georgia. And you can see that maybe some clouds and along with that, some showers trying to wrap around up into northern Georgia. That's going to kind of be a theme throughout today that we look at on Future View. Rain chances will pop up in the northern portion of the state, and some of those could move as far down south as northern central Georgia and maybe clip us, but overall nothing in the way of substantial rain like I was alluding to. So here you go on Future View. Even a couple of storms present farther up in North Georgia. We're not looking at any of those chances. This is 5 o'clock and we're still pretty much rain free as it does currently stand. But like I said, some of those showers going to try to push into central Georgia as we head into the evening and more so nighttime hours tonight. So if you have any plans for an outdoor dinner, maybe grilling out, it's best to do those a little bit earlier tonight to avoid encountering any of these rain showers. And then by the time you go into 9 p.m., hopefully you're already winding down for the night and getting ready to get in bed and don't have to worry about any of that rain interrupting any of your evening plans. But that rain, it looks like it's going to kind of come along with some scattered cloud cover. And along with that, it could try to hold on into the overnight hours into early tomorrow morning. Wouldn't put it out of the realm a possibility that we'll have a couple scattered shower chances as you are making your way out the door tomorrow. A couple clouds still in the picture. And then as we continue into the afternoon, that rain chance continues to be very scattered in nature, but a lot more widely scattered as opposed to what we're going to see later on this evening. This is 4 p.m. on Wednesday, green dot, maybe a flash of yellow. You'll see some flashes of orange. Don't think anything necessarily pops up in the way of a storm, but if it does, it's really just going to be a low-end thunderstorm, if anything. Now we go into Wednesday night where your rain chances start to thin out just a little bit, but very similar to the overnight hours tonight into early tomorrow morning. We could try to hold on to a few sprinkles as you walk out the door on Thursday. It's best to just have the rain gear ready to go. It's a good likelihood that you won't use it whatsoever. But each afternoon into the evening, I do believe that's when your rain chances are going to be greater because your temperatures are going to be a little bit warmer, leading to a lot of that rising motion at the surface and going to lift whatever form of surface moisture that we do have in the forecast. It would be a lot more widely scattered, and we would see even some pockets of some storms if, say, our dew point temperatures were in the 70s, but they're not looking to do that. We are looking at dew point temperatures somewhere in the 60s, which can be sufficient enough for these scattered light showers, but overall, nothing really substantial in the way of rain. And I'm still maintaining a very low rain chance over the course of your short-term forecast the next 3 days. So your grill cast tonight, I still think it's green spatulas. Like I said, the earlier the better. By the time you're rolling into 8 and 9 o'clock, that's when maybe you could run into a stray shower, but it's going to be so light in nature, going to last for only a couple minutes at a time. So it's really not going to impact your grill cast whatsoever. I think it's still a great night to have that backyard barbecue with friends and family if you are planning on it. Over the next 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we will continue to see that steady uptick in the high temperatures. 86 today into 87 on Wednesday, and then an 89 on Thursday, maintaining that 10% chance of rain, not even really throwing a rain icon on there, because I do believe most of you are just going to see mostly sunny skies, maybe some passing cloud cover here and there, nothing really substantial in the way of rain. And it may be such a quick shower that maybe you walk into a doctor's office and you're in there for about an hour or so. You come outside, there's a couple water droplets on your windshield, but you didn't catch anything in the way of rain. So very brief, and you may not even notice it if you are indoors for about an hour or two at a time when the rain shower could come over your area. So the bigger story will be the steady warming trend back up to the 90-degree mark on Friday. We're going to hover around 90 Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 89 and 90 do not feel all too different. One just has a 9 in front of it, the other has an 8 in front of it. And of course, all of these numbers are going to be above average for this time of year. Your average high temperature went down to 88 degrees over the course of this weekend. That will continue to go down as we go into these cooler months of the year, but 89 and 90 are all above average. So first time we've been above average in quite some time. I'll have to go do some digging to see how long specifically it has been since we've been above average in the high temperature department. Still had that pleasant feel in the air this morning with plenty of areas dipping down into the upper 50s, mainly into the lower 60s this morning. But I do believe we'll see less and less upper 50s as we go day by day into the start of the weekend, the end of the work week, somewhere around 63 degrees to kickstart Friday and Saturday mornings. All of these numbers are below your average low of 65 degrees this time of year. But of course, each and every day, you're going to have your Eastmans, you're going to have your Dublins, you're going to have your McRae's that take it a step or two farther, and they do get down into the upper 50s. But right now, I did believe that today was probably the last day that we'd see kind of that dividing line. There's probably about half of our area somewhere in the upper 50s, and then the other half is somewhere right around 60, maybe a couple degrees warmer. So a steady warming trend along with those afternoon high temperatures is what's expected over the next couple of days. The humidity day by day still going to fluctuate between the 50s and 60s will those dew point temperatures stick, and somewhere between the comfortable and the humid range. And the most important thing is we are staying out of the dark green category. So we really don't want that swampy air that you can wear in the forecast whatsoever now that we're heading into the month of September, or we're already well into the month of September, but heading closer to the fall season here in central Georgia. And you will see maybe some fluctuation towards the end of the work week. Overall, not really looking like anything impressive in the way of some moisture, just enough to sprout a couple of scattered showers and some scattered sprinkles in nature. I think that pattern is going to persist as we go into Friday evening, so you will see a couple of very minuscule green dots that could pop up, maybe some minuscule blue dots. Overall, just indicating that we could have just a couple of scattered light showers in the forecast. Overall, Friday evening plans, Saturday afternoon and evening plans are looking good to go. Maybe some passing cloud cover here or there. But then once we go into Sunday and specifically into Monday and Tuesday next week, that's where we finally look at some of this moisture off the Atlantic coast to try to push up into the southeast corner of the United States. Obviously, Florida has no problem getting it, given that they have a much more humid atmosphere than we do. But this would propel some more moisture into our forecast. And this right here, obviously not set in stone, not a very definitive rain chance, but it's one of the most impressive ones that we've had in about 2 weeks. So it does look like maybe a decent likelihood of seeing some rain showers on Monday, which wouldn't be a bad thing. And hopefully that rain just comes in the form of some showers, maybe some low-end thunderstorms that would allow for some alleviation of the dry conditions that have settled in. By the time we go all the way to Tuesday afternoon, it looks like the GFS and the European kind of on board, seeing a little overlap of green and blue right here, that we could see our fair share of more scattered showers in the picture as opposed to just a few isolated dots on your short range future view. But not much to talk about, not many changes with your 7-day forecast. There are some changes when it does come to the tropics. So we've been continuing to watch this wave that has moved off the coast of Africa over the last couple of days. You can see on the satellite imagery, underneath all this red, the red X, underneath the yellow, you can see that there are a lot more clouds and they're trying to circulate, trying to organize, and it looks like a very good likelihood that sometime before the end of today, if not today, really early tomorrow, that this system is going to be our next named storm, whether that's a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but now up to a 90% chance of developing over the next 48 hours. And once we get a chance that high, we don't really focus on the next 7 days because it's just going to be the same chance. But these are the highest chances of development that you can have. I know the system last week popped up a 90% chance of development, but that was over the next 7 days. We only saw the window of the next 48 hours get up to a 60% chance with that tropical wave. But this system is just continuing to move into a conducive environment for development. And as you see, this red shade continuing up to the west and the northwest, all the spaghetti plots that I continue to look at, they're not able to pop up on our graphics as of right now, but I am taking a look at them, monitoring them closely. What I see this system doing at the very most is creeping very close to the United States, but it still looks like it's going to take that curve back up into the north and into the Atlantic Ocean. So it doesn't really look like this is going to have any implications for central Georgia, maybe some impacts along the Atlantic coast of the United States, but that still remains to be seen. If we get a named storm with this before the end of today, a cone forecast will come out, and that will give us a much better idea of the specific path that the system may take. Now, just behind it, we have another area that is being outlined for potential development. This is right over here where you see the yellow X. So once again, where you see these X's actually outlined, that's going to be the actual system itself. The shaded area is just kind of giving you a general idea of the direction that these potential systems are heading. So right now, this wave right over here, moving off the coast of Africa, the westernmost coast of Africa. I'll have to do some refreshing on my country geography over there on the western tip of Africa. But it does look like this wave is going to continue over towards the west, just south of the Cape Verde Islands, and continue to run into the same environment that this wave in front of it just interacted with. Now, it may take some time for this system to gain some organization, build up some steam, because like we were talking about with the red shaded area, it was encountering an area of dry air, and that's going to be currently present back down to the east and the southeast of it. So this system will be running into its fair share of dry air. Maybe that dry air cluster can kind of break apart as this system does continue over towards the west. All in all, there's nothing of immediate concern with this system. This is still a very low chance of development, only a 20% chance of developing over the course of this next week. Now, there's a 0% chance of anything forming over the next 48 hours. So, like I said, this is just moving off the coast of Africa. If this is to maybe say get its act together and have a path towards the United States, it's going to be about a week and a half, 2 weeks before we're going to see any impacts with that. But it will be something we're closely monitoring about the chances of development. Is this going to run into a more conducive environment for development and maybe claim the next name on our hurricane season list? But that's as of the 8 a.m. update this morning. We'll get another update at 2 p.m. this afternoon, and meteorologist Ansley Parker will have more information with all things tropics as you go into the 5:30 and the 6:30 hours of our new and extended evening show. So hurricane frequency, we talked about it yesterday a little bit, but if you weren't here for the talk yesterday, on average, since we started taking records with hurricanes, the peak of hurricane season is officially on September 10th. Now, that was last Wednesday, so we are well past the peak already. This just means that on average, September 10th is that date where we typically see the most frequency of not only hurricanes, but also hurricanes and tropical storms. So that's why you'll see the red shaded area for just general named storms. Some may be below hurricane criteria, but also the official peak does fall for hurricanes just as themselves, September 10th all time. So after that, once you get to the peak, obviously you go down. Remember everything that you learned in language arts about the plot of a story. You reach the peak, the climax, and that's where really you should have the most suspense and the most going on with your story. Then after that, you have the falling action that kind of wraps up the story, and then you get over towards the conclusion. Well, we will see the frequency go down, but not to say that it won't be active as we go past the official peak, because that's exactly what's happening right now. We've already hit the peak, and we're getting more activity present this week as opposed to the middle of last week when we didn't have any potential areas of development outlined. So we'll continue to keep a close eye out, because you do see that all of these shaded areas are still pretty high as we go well into the month of October. It's right here along this line that goes all the way down to October 20th that we really start to see a downfall in activity as we roll into the month of November, which typically isn't very active during hurricane season, but you can get a couple named storms in nature. So 2025 hurricane season's name list. It's been a while since we've seen a named storm. The last one was Tropical Storm Ferdinand, and Ferdinand was simply a fish storm. It moved east of Bermuda up into the North Atlantic Ocean. A very similar path to Hurricane Erin, which was just before it, but Hurricane Erin just moved a little bit closer to the United States. It moved over to the western side of Bermuda and then went out back into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So 6 named hurricanes, only 1 named hurricane so far in the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. But we've had 6 named storms so far. The next name to claim would be Gabrielle, and it looks very likely that we'll have Gabrielle by the end of today or maybe very early tomorrow. But if that system behind it, just moving off the coast of Africa, is to decide to get its act together and start to organize, Umberto is going to be the next name list. There's an H in front of it, but the H is kind of silent. So really just kind of take away the H, actually. If I just put my hand over here, the official pronunciation of this would be Umberto right there, but it does have an H in front of it. And that H name is very, very important because you take a look at last year's hurricane season. August 12th, we had Hurricane Ernesto form. So that was pretty early in the month of August. It looked like we were kind of on pace for a pretty active hurricane season. But then we didn't have anything form until September 9th. That is nearly a month in time. So that period between when Hurricane Ernesto formed and when Hurricane Francine formed, that was the least active tropical period in 56 years' time. So yes, obviously, we were very, very quiet during the month of August, and we really didn't see activity pick back up until we got right around the peak of hurricane season on September 9th and then September 11th when Tropical Storm Gordon formed. And then we had another bit of a lull in activity. September 24th is finally when Hurricane Helene did form down in the Caribbean Sea. Obviously, we need no reminder about just how strong of a storm Hurricane Helene was. But the 2024 season, we had 6 named storms before the official peak of hurricane season. And then after the official peak, we had double the amount of named storms. So obviously, you can get a late start to hurricane season, and last year is a big testament to that. Well, here's the numbers for 2025. 6 named storms before the peak. That sound familiar? That is exactly the pace that we were on last year, and we're still forecasting anywhere from about 7 to 12 named storms for the rest of hurricane season. And right now, just according to the current picture in the tropics, it does look like we are going along with the schedule that last year had. Not to say that it is going to be an above average season, but we still could have anywhere from 7 to 12 named storms that could be forecasted, maybe even less than that. Sometimes we don't live up to the forecast, and that would not be a bad thing, especially when it comes to hurricane season, given the sensitivity with everything that's happened over the past year with Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, all of those devastating storms that did have lots and lots of lasting impacts. 7-day forecast just shows that gradual warm up into Friday, maybe hovering around the same high temperatures on Saturday, and then we'll see a bump back down Sunday and Monday into the mid 80s. Average high temperature, I was mentioning, 88 degrees this time of year, so 86 and 85 for Sunday and Monday would be below average, and very appropriately so, because Monday will mark the first day of the fall season, and obviously welcoming in the new season, which is going to be a cooler season eventually. It may take us some time to get there, but going ahead and welcoming in the new season with some below average temperatures is very appropriate. But we also see an uptick in the rain chances up to 20% on Monday. Obviously, it's been a very dry period. If I'm talking about 20% like it's kind of a substantial rain chance, that's just given the very dry spell that we have been under. But overall, mostly sunny skies, maybe partly cloudy at some times throughout each and every day. Overall, the nice and pleasant mornings that are fall-like will continue with lows somewhere in the low 60s as we roll into next week. Hopefully we can actually drop those high temperatures, maybe down into the 70s, and really give you a fall-like forecast, starting out somewhere in the 50s, maybe only getting up to about 76, 78 degrees. That would be the perfect forecast in my mind, but we'll see where fall does take us. Typically, we like to hold on to the warm air and some of the heat for the first little bit of fall. And speaking of the start of the fall season, let's talk about your average fall foliage. So I went and took the liberty of grabbing this graphic right here, which kind of just shows us on record for when we normally see that peak fall foliage. So when all the trees are turning those beautiful colors, those reds, those yellows, those oranges. Well, you can see farther up to the north, they get a bit of an earlier start to seeing all of those fall impacts. If you live in the North Georgia mountains or want to see some fall foliage a little bit earlier than down here in central Georgia, well, you should plan on making a trip up there to maybe Helen, Georgia, up there into Clayton, Georgia, anywhere at the southern foothills of the Appalachian Mountains around late October. So that's when we're expecting peak fall foliage around those areas. And then as you transition more into the Piedmont region of the state, Metro Atlanta, getting up into Athens, some areas even creeping here into central Georgia, that would be early November, but most of our area is going to see that peak fall foliage around mid-November, and then areas of South Georgia, a little bit closer to the coast, are going to see the peak fall foliage in late November. And then as you go down into Florida, they kind of get left out of the fun. They have lots of palm trees there, so those are evergreen. Obviously, don't get too many changes in the leaves, but mainly the northern portion of the state of Florida is going to see that peak fall foliage into the later portion of November. So a lot to look forward to over the next couple of months. Not many changes with your forecast, and obviously the tropics are giving us an indication that they're waking up just a tad, so we'll continue to keep you posted on the latest with the Atlantic hurricane season. That's going to do it for your extended forecast here this Tuesday. Be sure to tune in once again tomorrow, Wednesday morning at 10:30 for another look at what's ahead and another update on the tropics.